Good evening. Welcome to our Bible study tonight. It's an absolutely beautiful day outside. The preschool kids are having their little parties outside. There's just all kinds of great energy around our church right now, and it just continues to be. I so look forward to seeing everybody on Sunday. It's Pentecost Sunday. And so the Bible study tonight is ironically an Old Testament passage that has to do with Pentecost or receiving the Spirit. This is out of the Psalm 104. This is 10 verses out of that psalm, beginning with verse 24. And it is a flowery kind of passage, but this is one of those really good indications that good commentaries are always good to use if you really want insight into what you're reading in the Bible. So hear these words in the context of our Sunday that is coming, which is Pentecost. O Lord, how manifold are your works. In wisdom you have made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. Yonder is the sea, great and wide. Creeping things innumerable are there. Well, isn't that an interesting thing to say with all the cicadas coming? Living things both small and great. There go the ships and Leviathan that you formed to sport in it. These all look to you to give them their food in due season. When you give to them, they gather it up. When you open your hand, they are filled with good things. When you hide your face, they are dismayed. When you take away their breath, they die and return to their dust. When you send forth your spirit, they are created, and you renew the face of the ground. May the glory of the Lord endure forever. May the Lord rejoice in his works. Those who look on the earth and it trembles, who touches the mountains and they smoke. I will sing to the Lord as I live. I will sing praise to my God while I have being. May my meditation be pleasing to him, for I rejoice in the Lord. It's also very timely that talks about singing. We are going to start our congregational singing this Sunday, and I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to that as well. It is just a great. The timing of it is so good, and it feels so good to just take another step back towards normal, and we are so grateful to God. I feel like this passage that we just read is reflective of that. Well, this has come from Nurturing Faith and Tony Lee Carledge, and he gives the title to this Bible study, To Follow Jesus, Receive the Spirit. Well, you'll notice when you come in the church on Sunday morning that our paraments are red. That is reflective of Pentecost Sunday. I'm going to be preaching on Acts 2. That's where the passage about Pentecost is located. But ironically, it's not just the New Testament that talks about receiving the Spirit. This passage from the Old Testament that we just read is as well, and it speaks of God's Spirit as a gift to humankind, and it's a little bit of an insight into how the ancient Hebrew people what their understanding of God's Spirit was. Well, he breaks this down into three parts: the God who creates, the God who provides, and the God who empowers. He says Psalm 104 is a wash-in metaphor, not unlike other imaginative attempts to describe creation, like in Genesis 1 and 2. He says the psalm suggests a progression, not unlike the familiar story found in Genesis 1, where God creates the heavens first, and then the earth, and then the sea, and then the animal and plants and people. He says the psalmist describes God as, quote, being clothed with honor and majesty and wrapped in light. God stretches out the heavens as a tent and sets beams for the heavenly abode above the cosmic waters. God uses the clouds as a chariot and rides on the wings of the wind. This is in setting up this is the context of the previous verses before the ones that we read. He says, like a wise builder, God made the foundations of the earth firm, then covered its surface with water before setting the sea's boundaries. Everything needed for life is attributed to the divine, he calls it causation, that God makes springs to flow, causes grass to grow, and provides plants that humans can use to make bread, wine, and oil. we're in the middle of spring, and this is when we celebrate the spring of new growth, and we know that God is behind all those things. It's really a beautiful thing to consider that God is behind every single thing that springs forth. He says today's text begins an expression of awe at God's magnificent work and the incomparable wisdom required to create such an amazing world and fill it with living creatures. He says the psalmist then shifts to the sea. It's teeming with life, creeping things, innumerable, living things, both small and great. Humans are there too, although they're in ships, along with Leviathan to sport in it, it says. And that is a kind of a mixed term. Sometimes Leviathan is seen as like an evil sea creature, but in this sense, it's just something that's obviously very big in the sea, probably how they described whales. He says ancient mariners would have seen an occasional whale, which may have contributed to stories of Leviathan. And then in verses 27 through 30, he describes this as the God who provides. He says, "These all look to you to give them their food in due season." It refers not only to the sea creatures, but also to all animal life, including humans who gather the bounty of good things that come from God's hand. He says the ancients understood that crops needed rain in order to thrive. They believed that rain was the product of heaven's benevolence and drought the result of divine displeasure. You can imagine, they were so happy when it rained, and they felt like if they were in a drought that they had done something wrong. He says God provides more than rain for daily sustenance. However, the psalmist believed that life itself is due to God's favor, for the breath that enlivens all creatures come from God. It says, when you take away their breath, they die and return to their dust, the psalmist declared. But when you send forth your spirit, they are created. Now, this term for breath, it's one of my very favorite things in the Bible. Y'all know me, I did not want to have to study Greek and Hebrew when I was at the seminary, but this one word, this Hebrew word for breath, is called ruach, and it has to do with the spirit, and it is reflective of the Genesis story of God breathing life, hovering over the chaos and breathing life into the world. It's really just a beautiful, beautiful word, and that brings about this imagery in our minds. He says, in this context, it is the breath of life, the sending forth of God's Spirit. It creates life and renews creation. He says the imagery recalls the creation story in which God is also described in near human form, actively creating. Then the Lord God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. He says the continuation of that story also testifies that death involves a return to the ground. For out of it you were taken, and you are dust, and to dust you shall return. One of the greatest ideas our church has ever had has been our memorial garden out here. And we've just had, it's been such a blessing to folks to have this as a place to put their loved ones' ashes. And that's one of the things I say as I'm pouring the ashes into the hole, I use those words, from dust you came, and to dust you will return. He says the psalmist saw God's Spirit as the source of life, but the Hebrews also believed people could be blessed with the Spirit in exceptional ways, gaining a special closeness to God or unusual abilities. When Israel was in need and God called out strong leaders like Gideon to deliver and lead them, it was said that the Spirit of the Lord, a ruach, came upon them. I love that imagery. In all these texts, the word is the same in the Psalms, but it implies more than life-giving breath. God's Spirit can also provide wisdom, discernment, leadership, or surprising power, very reflective of many stories in the Old Testament, especially the story of Gideon. Well, he ends by describing the last verses as the God who empowers. He says, reflecting on the creative, sustaining, life-giving power of God brings the psalmist to celebrate God's enduring power over creation. He says the poet believed that those whom God has blessed with the spirit of life owe to God thanksgiving and praise. Indeed, he is so overcome with gratitude that the thought of people rejecting God's ways leaves him thinking that such persons don't deserve to have God's life-giving breath. And then he ends by saying, we could profit from joining the psalmist in his meditation upon God's amazing and ongoing gifts to humankind. If we believe that God is responsible for the wonders of natural world and for all life, including ours, then we certainly have cause to join the psalmist in praising God for as long as we live. How often do we remember? Well, this idea of Pentecost is a beautiful one. It's the early church was waiting on the gift of the Spirit. Jesus told them that it was coming, but they had to wait. And oh man, how is this reflective of where we are right now? How long have we been waiting to get back to a little bit of normal? And we finally come back as a church family to in-person worship, which we've been looking forward to for so long. And now this Sunday we're going to have congregational singing. I never thought it would mean this much to me to be able to sing in church and not be worried. And don't get me wrong, we have made all kinds of precautions, and we are still offering everything online, and we're going to have overflow in the gym. And if people want to come to church but don't feel comfortable singing, that's fine. You can go up to the gym and watch there, and that way you can still be here with us. But I know that most of us are just going to be so joyful to be able to come in God's house, to receive the Spirit, and to sing out rejoices. So thankful, our gratitude to God for all of His blessings and for giving us the kind of protection that we've had all this time. Well, I hope this finds you well. I so look forward to seeing you Sunday, and I hope you feel as blessed as I do today. Go in peace.